The ancient city of Troy, myth or real history? The city that shouldn't have existed. Imagine a city surrounded by massive stone walls, a city that witnessed war, betrayal, love, and destruction. For thousands of years, people believed this city existed only in the imagination of an ancient poet. Its name was Troy. According to the legendary story, a beautiful woman named Helen was taken to Troy by a Trojan prince named Paris. The Greeks sailed across the Aegean Sea to bring her back, and what followed became one of the most famous wars in human history. But there was one problem. Was Troy actually real? Was the Trojan War history, or simply an ancient legend? For centuries, nobody knew. Until one determined archaeologist began digging beneath the soil of modern-day Turkey. And what he discovered changed the story forever. Chapter 1. The Legend of Troy. The story of Troy is most famously told in Homer's Iliad, an ancient Greek epic traditionally dated to around the late 8th or early 7th century BCE. According to the legend, Troy was ruled by King Priam. The city was wealthy, powerful, and protected by enormous walls. But everything changed when Prince Paris traveled to Sparta. There, he encountered Helen, the wife of King Menelaus. Helen was said to be the most beautiful woman in the world. Paris and Helen fled together to Troy. Menelaus was furious. He called upon the Greek kings and warriors to help him bring Helen back. Thousands of warriors sailed toward Troy. Among them was one of the greatest heroes of Greek mythology, Achilles. The Greeks surrounded Troy. But Troy did not fall easily. For 10 long years, the city resisted. And then came the most famous trick in ancient warfare: the Trojan Horse. Chapter 2. The Trojan Horse. According to the legend, the Greeks built a giant wooden horse. They left it outside the walls of Troy and pretended to sail away. The Trojans believed the Greeks had finally abandoned the war. They brought the enormous wooden horse inside their city as a victory trophy. But hidden inside the horse were Greek soldiers. That night, while Troy slept, the soldiers emerged. They opened the city gates. The Greek army returned. And Troy was destroyed. It is one of the most famous stories ever told. But there is a major question. Did any of this actually happen? Chapter 3. The Search for the Lost City. For centuries, Troy was considered a legend. Many people believed Homer had created the city entirely from imagination. But in the 19th century, a wealthy German businessman named Heinrich Schliemann became obsessed with finding Troy. Schliemann believed that Homer's stories contained real historical information. He traveled to the region of northwestern Turkey. Near a hill called Hisarlik, Schliemann began excavating. And then, he found something extraordinary. Beneath the ground were the remains of ancient settlements. Not one city, but multiple layers of cities built on top of one another. It appeared that people had lived there for thousands of years. Schliemann believed he had found the legendary Troy. But the discovery was far more complicated than he imagined. Chapter 4. A City Buried Under Cities. Archaeologists eventually discovered that Hisarlik contained multiple archaeological layers. They are commonly identified as different phases of Troy, such as Troy I, Troy II, Troy VI, Troy VII, and others. Each layer represented a different period of occupation. Some cities were destroyed. Others were rebuilt, then destroyed again, and rebuilt once more. It was almost as if history had been stacked vertically beneath the ground. One of the most interesting layers is known as Troy VI. It featured impressive defensive walls and a large settlement. The city existed during the Late Bronze Age, around the period traditionally associated with the Trojan War. But another layer, Troy 7A, also attracted attention because evidence suggests the settlement experienced destruction and was subsequently rebuilt. So, which Troy was Homer's Troy? The answer remains uncertain.
Chapter 5. Was the Trojan War real? This is where history becomes complicated. Archaeology has confirmed that a real ancient city existed at Hisarlik, but that does not automatically prove Homer's story. We do not have an ancient document saying, on this exact date, the Greeks attacked Troy because Paris took Helen. We also have no archaeological evidence that clearly proves the existence of Achilles, Helen, or the Trojan Horse exactly as Homer described them.
However, there are clues. Ancient records from the Hittite Empire mention a place called Wilusa. Many scholars believe Wilusa may have been connected to Troy. Some Hittite texts also describe conflicts in western Anatolia involving a people called the Ahiyawa. Some researchers have suggested that the Ahiyawa may have been connected with the Mycenaean Greeks. If these connections are correct, they suggest that conflicts involving a city in the region may have occurred during the Late Bronze Age. But there is still no definitive proof that these events were the Trojan War described by Homer. Chapter 6. The Great Mystery of Homer.
So where did Homer's story come from? One possibility is that Homer preserved memories of real events. Ancient societies often pass stories from generation to generation through oral tradition. Over time, real events could become mixed with exaggeration, mythology, and heroic storytelling. A historical conflict may have inspired the legend. A real city may have become the setting. Real political struggles may have been transformed into a story about gods, heroes, and destiny. And after generations of storytelling, the legend became larger than life. This could explain why Troy appears to be both historical and mythical.
Chapter 7. The Trojan Horse. But what about the Trojan Horse? Did a gigantic wooden horse really enter Troy? Probably not in the way the legend describes. No archaeological discovery has conclusively proven that such a horse existed. Some historians have suggested that the story could have been inspired by a military machine, a symbolic offering, or even a metaphor for another form of deception. Ancient warfare involved many kinds of siege technology, and sometimes history transforms complicated events into simple, memorable stories. The wooden horse may therefore represent something that happened without being literally what Homer described. Chapter 8. The City of Troy Today. Today, the ruins of Troy are located near Hisarlik in northwestern Turkey. Visitors can walk through the remains of its ancient walls and settlements. What was once thought to be nothing more than a mythical city is now recognized as a real archaeological site with a long and complicated history. The ruins don't give us every answer. Instead, they give us more questions. Which layer was Homer's Troy? Did a major war actually happen? Was Helen a real historical figure? Did Achilles ever exist? And was the Trojan horse
based on a real event. We may never know the complete truth.
Chapter 9. Myth or Real History? So, was Troy real? Yes. Archaeology has demonstrated that a major ancient settlement existed at Hisarlik. Was the Trojan War real? Possibly, but it remains unproven. There may have been conflicts in the region during the Late Bronze Age that later contributed to the Trojan War tradition. Did Achilles, Helen, and the Trojan Horse exist exactly as Homer described? There is no conclusive evidence. And perhaps that is what makes Troy so fascinating. It exists somewhere between history and legend. A real city, surrounded by an unforgettable myth. Ending. The city that refused to disappear. Thousands of years ago, Troy may have been destroyed. Its walls collapsed. Its people disappeared. Its streets were buried beneath the earth. But the story survived. Generation after generation told the tale of Helen, Paris, Achilles, and the Great War. For centuries, people wondered whether Troy had ever existed. Then, archaeologists began digging, and beneath the soil, they found a city. Perhaps Homer exaggerated the story. Perhaps generations of storytellers transformed a real conflict into an epic legend. Or perhaps, somewhere beneath the layers of Troy, there are still secrets waiting to be discovered. Because sometimes, the greatest mysteries of history are not completely true or completely false. Sometimes, they are a mixture of both. This is the mystery of Troy. And the question remains, how much of Homer's legendary war was actually history? If you enjoyed this journey into the ancient world, subscribe to Mysteries of History for more stories of lost cities, forgotten civilizations, ancient mysteries, and the secrets hidden beneath history. Until the next mystery.